our viewers' benefit, could you please explain what is reshoring?
Reshoring is the idea that certain aspects of the supply chain could be better dealt with onshore, or taking them away from the global supply chains that are the rule right now, as you said in your introduction. So an example could be semiconductors, for instance. There's a big play right now to have those semiconductor factories in North America rather than in Asia. Critical minerals is another example. Those are things that make possible electric vehicles, or the batteries that are found in electric vehicles. Those substances are found in Canada, but right now 70% of that supply chain is basically ruled by the People's Republic of China. So the idea is to have a more resilient supply chain means more products being manufactured in Canada or North America, or certainly having that supply chain available.
Okay, now you've highlighted a couple of industries, automotive, for example. What other, or is this perhaps the most important sector that has been most exposed by COVID in terms of supply chain management? Is there any other industry you'd like to highlight?
Well, certainly you mentioned PPE. This was the icing on the cake for people's realization that our supply chains matter. It used to be supply chains would be talked about by people with pen protectors in their shirts. It was not really a big topic. But now, certainly during and post-COVID, if we are in post-COVID, it now is. And so the first item was when we were all trying to scramble around, trying to get personal protective equipment, masks, gowns, gloves, respirators even. All of a sudden, people realized that 98% of that was controlled by the Chinese.
Right.
And, and there was all sorts of breaks in the supply chain. The stories I've heard of, whole plane loads of masks being sold to buyers, and then they find another buyer that wants to pay slightly more, and then those masks disappear. So there was no certainty of supply chain, and that created a lot of shortages. Closer to where we are right now, Tanya, it's all been about vaccine production.
Right.
And again, realization that, if you really want to protect your people, you should be concerned about where we have vaccines coming from, and whether we have local ability to produce those vaccines.
Right. No, absolutely. And we have about 50 seconds before commercial, but you were the Minister of Health provincially in Ontario during the SARS crisis. And so when I'm looking at, this exposure, if you will, of our supply chain, I thought, well, why didn't that, or maybe it did that health crisis expose our similar vulnerabilities? Why or why not? 30 seconds.
It did. And certainly there were recommendations after SARS to make sure we had stockpiles for just this emergency. And then people forgot about that advice, and then we came up short. So again, we have to relearn that lesson. Okay.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned that, that those recommendations has come through, and this whole sudden scramble, this last go with COVID, it shouldn't probably have happened. But anyways, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on why reshoring might be important right after this commercial break.